You've surely heard the name Heracles. For centuries, people have spoken of him. His labors have been remembered, recorded, and retold time and again. But behind the glory lies something else, a shadow of pain, guilt, and impossible choices. In this story, you'll learn how Heracles was born through divine deception, how, still in his cradle, he defeated death by strangling serpents, why he killed his teacher during a lesson, how he lost his family not in battle, but at home, by his own hand. You'll hear how he fought creatures no one dared even name, how he journeyed to the edge of the world, how he descended into the underworld and returned. Long ago, in the shadow of Thebes' high walls, lived a woman named Alcmene. She was of royal descent, a lineage tracing back to Perseus. Known not only for her beauty, but also for her resolute character, Alcmene swore she would not let her husband, Amphitryon, a hero and warrior, near her until he avenged her relatives' deaths. She remained steadfast even as weeks and months passed without news. Her resolve caught the attention of Zeus, the thunder god, who had seduced mortal women before. Intrigued not just by her beauty, but by her willpower, Zeus took Amphitryon's form one night, claiming victory over his enemies, and spent 3 nights with her, extended by divine power. The next day, the real Amphitryon returned. When the truth came to light, Alcmene was pregnant with twins, one from her husband, one from a god. Hera, Zeus's wife, was humiliated once again. To exact revenge, she delayed Alcmene's labor and hastened the birth of another woman's son, Eurystheus, ensuring he was born before Heracles. By prophecy, Eurystheus became the rightful ruler over many lands. Heracles, though Zeus's son, was born later. After Heracles and his brother Iphicles were born, Hera tried to kill the infant Heracles. She sent 2 serpents into their bedroom. Iphicles screamed and crawled away, but Heracles, not yet able to walk, grabbed the snakes with his bare hands and strangled them. It was clear then, this child was extraordinary, possessing a strength beyond explanation. His childhood was filled with learning. Amphitryon brought the best tutors in Greece. Linus, brother of the singer Orpheus, taught him music and letters. The wise centaur Chiron taught wrestling and archery. Eurytus taught spear throwing, and Castor taught chariot driving. But Heracles struggled with lessons that didn't suit his nature. Music bored him. Gentleness seemed like weakness. He grew irritated with the lyre, his tutor's voice, and the notes he was forced to repeat. One day, when Linus corrected him, Heracles, in a fit of rage, grabbed the lyre and struck his teacher on the head. Linus died instantly. At the trial, Heracles explained it was an impulsive act, and he was not punished. But Amphitryon realized the boy couldn't stay within palace walls. He sent him to the countryside to grow among nature and farmers, far from those unable to handle his temper. In the village, Heracles quickly became a local hero. He protected livestock from wolves, caught bandits, helped the elderly, and won wrestling matches and races at festivals. As he grew, he was invited to military campaigns. He gained fame in a battle against the minions, helping Thebes secure victory. For this, King Creon of Thebes gave him his daughter Megara in marriage. It was a union forged in gratitude and respect. They had several sons, and for the first time, Heracles felt he could live not in battle or turmoil, but in peace. But that peace was short-lived. Hera, biding her time, struck again. She cast a madness upon Heracles, not a fleeting rage, but a thick fog that consumed his mind. He no longer recognized faces, couldn't tell friend from foe. In this state, he took up arms and killed his children. Some accounts say he also killed Megara. Others say she survived and was given to another. When the madness lifted, Heracles saw the blood, the bodies, but heard no accusations. No one dared speak of what he had done. Yet they all stepped back, leaving him alone with guilt that could not be washed away. He left the city and journeyed to Delphi, to Apollo's temple. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He asked for a path. The oracle, speaking through the Pythia, gave him a command. To atone, he must complete 12 labors. These tasks would be set by King Eurystheus, ruler of Tyrans, the one Hera ensured was born before him. Eurystheus assigned the labors not out of justice, but out of fear. He knew who Heracles was, and hoped the tasks would destroy him. Each labor was designed for death, battles with monsters, feats no god would dare attempt. The first labor was the Nemean lion, a beast with impenetrable skin and a maw that could snap a bronze sword. Eurystheus's first task was meant to be fatal by design. Heracles was to go to Nemea, a land where no one dared hunt, where paths were overgrown and villages deserted. People fled because a lion, unlike any known creature, lived in the caves of the Nemean valley. It was enormous, ferocious, and invulnerable. Its hide withstood swords, arrows, and spears. No hunter returned alive, not even wounded. The beast seemed impervious to pain. Heracles knew this would not be a hunt in the usual sense. It would be a trial where brute strength might prove useless. He went alone, carrying only a bow, a sword, and a handmade club, moving in silence. As he entered the Nemean valley at dusk, the air felt heavy, as if before a storm. The trees stood lifeless, birds silent. Tracks were everywhere, broken branches, gnawed bones, tufts of fur. Heracles didn't rush. He knew the lion would come to him eventually, but he didn't expect it so soon. A low growl echoed from a ravine, and moments later, the lion appeared on a rock. It was the size of a bull, its eyes glowing in the twilight, its hide thicker than any armor. Heracles drew his bow and fired. The arrow struck the beast's chest, but didn't pierce. The lion flinched, stepped aside, and roared louder. A second arrow hit its flank useless. Heracles discarded the bow, drew his sword, and charged. The blade slid off the hide like it was stone. The lion swiped, sending Heracles crashing back. He realized then, no ordinary weapon could kill it. His only chance was hand-to-hand combat. He waited for the lion's next charge, dodged, and grabbed its neck, pinning it to the ground. He squeezed. The struggle was long. The lion clawed, thrashed, tore at the air, but Heracles held on. In that moment, he wasn't a man. He was a force, a shadow of rage, an immovable mass. Eventually, the lion weakened, stilled, and died. Its hide remained intact. No knife could cut it. Using the lion's own claw, Heracles skinned it, a symbolic act. Only the beast could reveal its own secret. He draped the hide over his shoulders, not out of pride, but for its utility, and returned to Tiryns alone, as he had left, saying little. Eurystheus heard the tale through a servant, and refused to meet Heracles in person. From then on, Heracles would report his labors from a distance. The labor was counted. The second task was no less perilous, but far more complex. If the Nemean lion was a fortress of flesh, the Lernaean Hydra was almost a myth. Creatures like it didn't live in the usual sense. They grew, multiplied, filled cracks and voids like a disease. The Hydra dwelt in the swamps near Lerna, a damp, rotting place shrouded in mist, where the earth felt warm not from the sun, but from something festering below. Stories claimed it had 9 heads, though those who saw it swore there were more 10, perhaps 20. The true danger lay not in their number, but in their nature. Cut off one head, and 2 would grow back. One head was said to be immortal, impervious to time or weapons. Its venom was so potent that even its breath poisoned air, water, and earth. Where it passed, grass blackened, and birds dropped dead mid-flight. Heracles set out for Lerna, but knowing brute force alone wouldn't suffice, he took his young nephew, Iolaus. It was a rare instance of not going alone. Iolaus wasn't a warrior, but was clever, quick, and calm. Heracles sensed that against such a creature, a single blow, even the mightiest, wouldn't win. They needed speed and coordination. As they reached the swamps, the air grew heavy, hard to breathe. A grayish haze clung to everything. Trees stood crooked, roots rose from the ground, and the soil squelched underfoot. They found the lair a fissure in the earth leaking faint, almost transparent steam. Heracles tossed a burning torch inside and waited. Silence, then movement. The Hydra emerged from the dark maw. Its body was immeasurable, snake-like yet too wide. Its necks writhed like elongated serpents, each tipped with eyes, fangs, and endless aggression. It didn't attack immediately. It watched, studied, then lunged. The battle began instantly. Heracles severed one head with his sword, only to see 2 grow in its place. He struck another, and the cycle repeated. With each moment, the heads multiplied, hissing, biting, coiling around him. He realized his strength would fail before victory. He called to Iolaus, who stood ready with a burning branch. Each time Heracles cut a head, Iolaus seared the stump, cauterizing the flesh to prevent regrowth. They worked in sync. One struck, the other burned. One fought, the other finished. Slowly, they felled all but one head, the immortal one, unyielding to sword or fire. Heracles grabbed a massive rock and crushed it, pinning it to the ground, striking until it stilled. He severed it and buried it deep, piling stones atop it. The Hydra was defeated, but its venom remained. Learning from the fight, Heracles collected its blood-thick, black, smelling of metal and death, and dipped his arrows in it. Now every shot carried lethal poison, wounds incurable by prayers or potions. He returned to Tiryns, and Eurystheus, as usual, avoided meeting him. The labor was acknowledged, though rumors spread that since Heracles didn't fight alone, it wasn't fully valid. Eurystheus tried to diminish the victory, but no one dared openly challenge the man who defeated a creature whose breath killed trees. After facing monsters and death, Eurystheus shifted tactics, aiming to exhaust Heracles, not with battle, but with time. The next task seemed less dangerous, but no less daunting: to capture the Ceryneian Hind. This creature wasn't a monster, but almost sacred. It lived in the wild forests of Arcadia, on the slopes of Mount Cerynea, and was said to belong to Artemis, goddess of the hunt. With golden antlers and bronze hooves, it didn't attack or destroy. It simply ran, faster than the wind, lighter than a shadow. No one had ever caught it. Those who tried either died or wandered the mountains for weeks. Heracles understood this task was different. Strength wouldn't help, nor would his club or bow. The hind couldn't be killed. Artemis wouldn't forgive that. It had to be caught alive, unharmed, with respect for its nature. That meant no haste, no noise, no anger, only patience and care. He set out for Arcadia alone, with just a cloak, food, and the knowledge that this could take months. It did. He tracked the hind for nearly a year, following dew-soaked trails, faint hoof prints, and tufts of fur on branches. Sometimes he glimpsed it from afar, its golden antlers catching the sunlight like a mirage. He didn't rush. A single reckless move would restart the chase. He crossed dense forests, rivers, mountains, and valleys. At times, it felt less like hunting and more like following time itself, or nature, which refused to be caught. Villagers stopped asking why he walked. They began to see it as a pilgrimage. One early morning, in cold air, he saw the hind pause at a stream. For the first time, it didn't flee. It drank, glanced at him, and stayed. Perhaps it was tired, perhaps it accepted him, or perhaps the time had come. Heracles approached slowly, without sudden moves. He knew grabbing it would be futile. Instead, he drew his bow not to harm, but to graze a tendon in its leg with a light arrow. The hind flinched, but didn't fall. It stumbled, losing its rhythm, and Heracles gently took it by the neck. He didn't use force, just held it, like holding a breath. He bandaged its leg with soft cloth and began the journey back, walking beside it, not leading, but as an equal. They moved slowly, resting often, and the hind never tried to escape. It seemed to understand the task was done. As they neared Mycenae, Artemis appeared. Her gaze was cold, but not wrathful. She knew the hind was hers. Heracles explained it wasn't his will, that he'd done no harm and preserved the creature's dignity. The goddess listened, and allowed him to show the hind to Eurystheus briefly to prove the task's completion, then release it back to Arcadia's forests. He did so. He brought it to Tiryns' gates, showed it to the king, and without waiting for words, freed it. The hind ran lightly, as if it had all been a dream. The wound healed, leaving no trace. Eurystheus was displeased, hoping the hind's capture was impossible, but Heracles succeeded. This labor wasn't bloody or loud, not heroic in the usual sense. Yet it may have been the first where Heracles learned that strength isn't always a strike. Sometimes it's a step back, waiting and silence. The labor was counted, though Eurystheus grumbled. The fourth task demanded another hunt, but not for a marvel, for a threat. Unlike the hind, which required care and reverence, the Erymanthian boar was crude, destructive, and bloody. It roamed the slopes of Mount Erymanthus in Arcadia, terrorizing locals for years. Larger than any wolf or horse, its tusks could split trees, its roar echoed for miles, and its tracks dented stone. It attacked herds, ruined crops, overturned carts, and sometimes homes. Villagers fled at its approach, and every hunter who faced it died swiftly, leaving no tales. Heracles went alone, knowing a crowd would be a burden against a beast that could kill with one charge. He climbed higher into the mountains, where the air grew cold, trees stunted, and snow-dusted paths even in warmer months below. Along the way, he stopped at the home of Pholus, a wise and peaceful centaur living far from bustling roads. Pholus welcomed him, shared food, and opened a clay jar of wine. Heracles didn't know the wine belonged to all centaurs. Its scent spread, drawing others agitated, territorial, sensitive to its use without permission. A quarrel erupted. Defending himself and his host, Heracles fought. Some centaurs died, others fled. Among the wounded was Chiron, his immortal mentor, struck by a poisoned arrow. Though Chiron didn't die, the pain lingered forever, a tragedy Heracles couldn't undo. After this, he swore off wine during his labors. He pressed on. The higher he climbed, the quieter it grew. The boar's tracks were deep, snow melting by day and freezing by night, turning paths treacherous. He found the beast on a ridge, rooting for food. Heracles didn't attack. He waited. When the boar charged, he retreated, luring it higher into a narrow ravine. The beast slipped, sank into snow, and lost balance. Heracles seized its tusks, bound it with rope, and subdued it. It wasn't a fight, but a wrestle with weight and fury. He didn't kill it, his task was to capture. He carried the bound boar down through snow and ice to Tiryns, a journey of days. Villagers watched in awe, expecting it to break free, but it stayed still. At Eurystheus's palace, the king peeked out and hid, ordering the beast removed. Rumors spread that he had a bronze jar dug to hide in whenever Heracles returned. The labor was counted. The boar was released deep in uninhabited mountains. Heracles didn't ask its fate. He returned with a new scar, memories of centaurs and weary shoulders. Sometimes the heaviest burden isn't the beast, but what happens on the way to it. The next task was different. No monsters, no poison, no sacred creatures. Just filth, on an unimaginable scale. Eurystheus ordered Heracles to clean the stables of King Augean, ruler of Elis, a fertile region famed for its herds. The stables housed thousands of cattle and horses, uncleaned for decades, some say 30 years, others longer. Manure piled in layers, hardened by time, spilling into streets, streams, and fields. The stench carried for miles. People avoided Augeas's lands, but the king believed his herd's wealth excused the mess. The task was humiliating. Eurystheus hoped the hero who slew monsters would refuse to shovel dung, fail, or simply leave. But Heracles accepted without a word. Arriving in Elis, he didn't reveal his sender. He met Augean and proposed a deal. He'd clean the stables in one day for 1/10 of the herd. Augean, certain it was impossible, agreed, chuckling, and brought his son as a witness to Heracles' expected failure. But Heracles didn't touch a shovel. He studied the nearby rivers Alpheus and Peneus and dug channels, redirecting their flow through the stables. In one day, the waters washed away years of filth, leaving the stalls pristine. Augean, seeing the result, was furious, not pleased. He'd been outwitted. He refused payment, claiming the rivers, not Heracles, did the work. He expelled Heracles in disgrace, and even banished his own son for admitting the deal's fairness. Heracles didn't argue. He returned to Tiryns and reported the task's completion. But Eurystheus, learning the rivers did the labor, declared it invalid, saying Heracles acted as a contractor, not a servant. Still, he assigned more tasks. Later, outside the labors, Heracles returned to Elis, led an army, defeated Augean, and gave power to his son, who had spoken the truth. Legend says this victory founded the Olympic Games, but after cleaning the stables, Heracles left silently, without reward or recognition, with another labor dismissed. Yet the task was done. Stables, filthy for decades, were clean in a day, not by gods, armies, or force, but by wit and water. The 6th task took Heracles to Arcadia, to Lake Stymphalis. At first glance, it seemed peaceful. Still waters, forested shores, hills sloping to the lake. But locals knew better. The lake belonged to birds, no one named aloud. People whispered of them, falling silent when they appeared. The Stymphalian birds weren't mere predators. Their feathers were iron, sharp as arrowheads. When they flew, feathers rained down, piercing people, livestock, trees, and roofs. Their cries were deafening, like gongs ringing in the ears. They attacked in flocks, unstoppable. Arrows couldn't pierce their feathers, nets tore, and fire only provoked them. Heracles arrived in early autumn. The forest was dull, grass faded, the lake still. The silence wasn't calming, it warned. He saw the birds hiding in reeds and trees, not rising until threatened. He knew shooting from the ground was futile. He needed them airborne. Exploring the lake, he found an old tower once used by fishermen. There, he discovered bronze rattles, crafted by Hephaestus, their sound unbearable to the birds. Heracles tied them to his belt, climbed a rock above the lake, and struck them, the noise filling the valley. The birds took flight black, gleaming like spear tips, with burning eyes and metallic wings. They circled, hesitant to attack. As they shed feathers like a steel rain, Heracles drew his bow, its arrows tipped with Hydra's venom. He aimed precisely, unhurried. Each shot felled a bird. Those that survived fled beyond the mountains, never returning. When the fight ended, the lake was calm again, the ground littered with bird corpses. Heracles gathered feathers as proof and left before fear returned to the area. He knew one surviving bird could summon the flock back. In Tiryns, he presented the feathers to Eurystheus, who didn't argue this time, just marked another labor complete. It seemed like a hunt, but Heracles knew it was about sound, patience, and timing. He didn't charge into battle. He waited for their weakness and struck swiftly. Sometimes danger hides in the branches, and you must draw it out not with force, but with sound, light, or the silence between strikes. The seventh task sent Heracles across the sea to Crete, to King Minos. Eurystheus ordered him to capture a wild bull terrorizing the island. It wasn't a mythical monster, breathing no fire or venom, but its presence was a curse. Its eyes held not rage, but madness. Stories said it emerged from the sea, a gift from Poseidon to Minos as a sign of divine favor. Minos was to sacrifice it, but struck by its beauty white, gleaming. Powerful, he hid it and offered a lesser bull instead. Poseidon's wrath turned the gift into a curse. The bull went wild, destroying fields, fences, and people. No herder could stop it. Minos banned even speaking of it. Heracles arrived without guards or warning, going straight to Minos' court to demand access. Surprisingly, Minos didn't object, perhaps glad to rid himself of the problem. He pointed to where the bull was last seen and stepped back. Heracles tracked it through foothills and plains, past broken pens and charred carts. It took days to find it grazing alone at a hill's base. It was magnificent muscular, white-furred, with horns like polished iron but tense, as if guarding, not grazing. When Heracles stepped forward, it charged, shaking the earth. He didn't dodge. He grabbed its horns, and the struggle began not a fight to the death, but to hold. The bull reared, kicked, thrashed, but Heracles stood firm, not crushing but restraining. Slowly it tired. He roped its horns, secured its body, and led it to the coast. A ship awaited. No one believed the bull would board, but it was calm, as if recognizing a stronger force or simply exhausted. They crossed the sea, Heracles holding the rope, one hand on the horns, as waves rocked the ship. In Tiryns, Eurystheus, as usual, hid and ordered the bull removed. Some say it later appeared in Attica, killed by Theseus. Others say it vanished into the pre-dawn mist, returning to the sea. Heracles didn't protest. The task was done. It had less blood, but no less strain, and perhaps more respect. Sometimes the enemy isn't to be destroyed, but understood, held, and endured. Each task showed that Heracles' labors were about confronting disruptions of nature. What should have been peaceful became dangerous. A lion that shouldn't be invulnerable, a bull meant for sacrifice turned cursed. Now, maraes that no longer ate grass. Eurystheus sent Heracles to Thrace, to the land of the Bistones, ruled by King Diomedes. This king revered no gods, honored no men, and feared no blood. He kept 4 horses in his palace, fed not on hay, but human flesh. These maraes were ferocious as predators, tearing victims in their stalls. Their neighs sounded like howls, their hooves dented stone, and they were chained with bronze. Diomedes saw them as symbols of his power, believing no one could challenge him while they lived. Heracles arrived with a small group of rare choice, knowing he couldn't fight, search, and guard the horses alone. At Diomedes' palace, he saw them in stone pens reeking of death large, black-furred, with bloodshot eyes and yellow teeth. They watched, sensing his fearlessness. Heracles and his men freed the maraes, slipping reins over them, and began leading them away. The horses resisted, biting and kicking, but they moved. All went well until Diomedes' warriors appeared. He wouldn't let his horses go without a fight. A fierce battle ensued. Heracles ordered his men to lead the maraes while he held off the pursuit. He defeated Diomedes, not just overpowering him but capturing him. Then he made a bold choice. He fed Diomedes to his own maraes. It wasn't vengeance, but balance. The beast fed by blood consumed its master. Astonishingly, the maraes calmed after eating. Their rage vanished, and they followed like ordinary animals. Heracles brought them to Tyrants. Eurystheus, stunned, dedicated them to Hera, or in some tales, released them to vanish in the mountains. Another legend claims these maraes later reached Alexander the Great, one becoming the ancestor of his horse Bucephalus. The labor was completed not in blood, but in restoring balance. Heracles didn't just tame the beasts, he broke the cycle of evil that fed them. Sometimes, to stop rage, you need not a weapon, but the end of its origin story. After returning to Tyrants, Heracles had no rest. The next task awaited, to retrieve the belt of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. This belt, a gift from Ares, god of war, was no mere adornment, but a symbol of authority and martial prowess. For the Amazons, it signified the right to lead and fight. They lived far away, on the Black Sea's shores, a nation of warrior women who took no husbands, needed no protection, and followed their own laws. Heracles didn't know what to expect. This task was unlike the others, not about capturing a beast or defeating a force, but negotiating or taking. Perhaps both. He sailed with a small expedition, stopping at cities where his fame preceded him. People welcomed him with cautious respect, sensing his journeys were becoming more than servitude, something greater, more perilous. At the Amazon's capital, he was met not with weapons, but questions. Hippolyta came herself, not in armor but simple attire, the belt at her hips, fearless yet uninterested in war. She listened to his request. He spoke honestly. The belt was needed not for him, but for his task. She studied him, then agreed to give it. Heracles was stunned. For the first time, a labor might end without battle. He waited in camp for her to bring the belt. Amazons visited, some spoke with his men, and all seemed calm until a different wind rose from the sea. Stories differ on what happened next. Some say Hera spread a rumor among Heracles' men that the Amazons planned an attack, sparking panic and a fight. Others claim Eurystheus sent warriors to sabotage the peaceful exchange. Either way, everything changed in an instant. A battle erupted between Heracles and Hippolyta. She may not have wanted to fight, but had no choice. Heracles was stronger. He defeated her, took the belt, and withdrew. Her death or defeat divided the Amazons. Some fled to the steppes. Others vowed revenge. Trust was shattered. Even if Heracles didn't intend it, it happened before his eyes. He returned with the belt. Eurystheus accepted it as a trophy, uncaring of how it was won. The task was done, but Heracles, legends say, stayed silent after this journey. He didn't boast or carry the trophy. In this labor, he didn't defeat a beast, he lost the chance to do things differently. Sometimes what's given in peace collapses from fear or a hand not stayed in time. The next task took Heracles beyond the familiar past mountains, seas, and horizons. Eurystheus ordered him to steal the cattle of Geryon, a being living on the far west, beyond the ocean, at the world's edge. These cattle were renowned for their strength and beauty, but reaching them was harder than any fight. Geryon was no man or god, but a three-bodied giant with 3 torsos, 3 heads, 6 arms, yet 1 heart and will. He lived on the island of Erythia, guarded not only by the sea, but by Orthrus, a 2-headed dog as fierce as its master. To reach Erythia, Heracles crossed Libya, moving west where cities vanished and stars shifted. The heat was unbearable. One day, when the air seemed to melt and the ground burned, Heracles, in frustration, aimed his bow at the sun itself. Helios, the sun god, admired his audacity and gifted him a golden cup of vessel gods used to cross the ocean to the world's dark side. With it, Heracles reached Erythia. Orthrus attacked first. Heracles felled the dog with his club before it could close in. The herdsmen guarding the cattle met the same fate. Heracles felt no malice, just necessity. He freed the cattle and prepared to leave. Geryon appeared late, not from fear, but knowing only one fight would decide it. Armed with 3 spears and 3 shields, he attacked. The battle was grueling. Heracles dodged between his bodies, parrying blows while keeping the cattle from scattering. Knowing defeat meant failure, he drew his bow and fired a Hydra-poisoned arrow, piercing all 3 torsos. Geryon collapsed slowly, like a shadow leaving the island. The cattle submitted without their master. Heracles herded them back in the golden cup. The return was arduous. Cattle strayed, some fled. In Italy he regatted them. In Etruria, he fought bandits. In Thrace, he faced deception. But he reached tyrants. Eurystheus accepted the cattle and immediately sacrificed them. Not one remained with Heracles. The labor left only fatigue, sand in his clothes, and the image of a fallen giant. He didn't complain. He crossed the world, fought a three-bodied foe, and won with one body. The 11th task was unlike any before. Eurystheus ordered Heracles to fetch golden apples from a tree in the Hesperides garden. This wasn't about monsters, but the garden's location. No one could find it. It existed not on maps, but at the boundary between worlds far west, beyond the ocean and last cliffs. The tree, a wedding gift from Gaia to Hera, bore apples of immortality. Guarded by the Hesperides nymphs of evening and laden, a sleepless dragon coiling around it. Its hiss echoed before the garden was even in sight. Heracles didn't know where to go. His journey was a wandering through deserts, swamps, and mountains. He questioned sages, hunters, goddesses. Some say he fought Antaeus, a giant invincible, while touching the earth, lifting and strangling him. Others say he freed Prometheus, who in gratitude pointed the way. At the world's edge, where day ends and night waits, Heracles met Atlas, the Titan holding the heavens. Bent under the weight, Atlas's gaze was weary but calm. Heracles saw he was the key, kin to the Hesperides. He offered a deal. He'd hold the sky if Atlas fetched the apples. Atlas agreed. Heracles took the heavens, not just weight, but the press of time, stars, and the universe's breath. He stood silently, enduring, as Atlas returned with the apples. Tasting freedom, Atlas refused to resume his burden, offering to deliver the apples himself. Heracles agreed, but asked Atlas to hold the sky briefly to adjust his cloak. Unwittingly, Atlas complied, and Heracles took the apples and left. In Tiryns, Eurystheus, unsure of the apples' power, returned them to the gods, or, some say, they vanished. Heracles didn't care. The journey, not the prize, mattered. He found what none could, spoke with those who don't speak, held what none hold, not with a sword, but with cunning. Sometimes, the hardest task isn't slaying a dragon, but knowing where its day begins. The final task required no victory over a monster, no capture of a king or beast. Heracles was to descend into the underworld and bring back Cerberus, the three-headed hound guarding the boundary between life and death. The task seemed impossible, not just for the beast's terror, but because the underworld was a one-way journey. Before starting, Heracles went to Eleusis for purification rites, as no living soul could approach the underworld without them. He then found a cave at Cape Tanarum, an entrance to Hades. With each step, the air grew colder, sounds muffled. Stones lost warmth, walls closed in. Time vanished. He saw souls neither hostile nor kind, just there, standing by lifeless rivers or barren trees, silent. He reached Hades's court. The god met him calmly, knowing his purpose, and allowed Cerberus's removal on one condition: Heracles must subdue him without weapon, sword, club, or destructive force, using only hands and will. Heracles agreed. Deeper he went into stillness until he saw Cerberus at the stone gates. Its 3 heads exhaled steam, fur bristled, tail snaked. It radiated not rage, but primal unease, ancient and unmoving. Heracles approached cautiously, not shouting or seeking weakness. He knew such a creature couldn't be fought conventionally. When Cerberus lunged, he caught its neck, holding firm not with fury, but resolve. The hound thrashed, growled, its head snapping, but Heracles didn't strike. He held until Cerberus recognized not a fight, but a will. It stilled. With Hades's permission, Heracles led it to the surface. People trembled, retreating as he brought the Underworld's guardian. Eurystheus hid in his palace, uninterested in details, only confirming the task's completion. Heracles returned Cerberus to Hades as promised, leaving no trace. He had done what was asked and vanished from sight. With this, the labors ended. 12 tasks, each harder than the last. Heracles crossed forests, deserts, mountains, and even death, never losing sight of his goal. He proved boundaries exist only until challenged. After the labors, he gained freedom. No longer a servant, he didn't return to his old life. Still Zeus's son, his name echoed across Greece. He lived on, joining new campaigns, fighting others' wars, aiding the besieged, and winning where others failed. Kings invited him, enemies feared him. He married again, multiple times. His story closed. He endured 12 trials, each demanding not just strength, but patience, clarity, and resilience. He performed feats, fought monsters, roamed the world, faced gods, lost, erred, and began again. He moved forward even when the path was unclear, the goal foreign, or pain familiar. In the end, he didn't become a god immediately. He received no tangible reward. He simply finished what he had to do. And that was enough. Friends, if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel. Your support isn't just a click, it's a chance to keep these myths alive for thousands. Though we may never meet, your like and subscription make these stories resonate. Share ideas for new stories in the comments. What heroes, gods, or legends do you want to hear? Your suggestions inspire us to create content that sparks imagination. Thank you for being with us, and see you in the next story.